Imagine you are standing in the middle of the African savanna. About 1.8 million years ago, the sun just went down, the shadows are stretching, and the world is about to become incredibly dangerous. You are completely surrounded by apex predators, lions, leopards, packs of giant hyenas that can crush bone with a single bite. And right there, in the middle of this prehistoric nightmare, you are holding a human baby. If you think about it objectively, a human infant is the absolute worst design for surviving in the wild. Across the entire animal kingdom, human babies are born the most physically immature and utterly helpless. A baby horse can stand up and run within hours of being born. A baby chimpanzee can physically cling to its mother's fur while she swings through the trees. But a human baby? It can't run. It can't fight. It can't even regulate its own body temperature well enough to survive a cold night. And there is another massive problem. Because our ancestors evolved to walk upright on two legs, a trait called bipedalism, our feet transformed from grasping organs into flat, weight-bearing platforms. That meant a human infant could no longer physically hold onto its mother. It had to be actively carried 100% of the time. To make matters worse, human babies do the one thing you absolutely should never do in a landscape filled with hungry predators. They cry, loudly, piercingly. From an evolutionary perspective, a crying baby in the dark is essentially ringing a dinner bell for every large carnivore within a 5-mile radius. So, how did we survive? How did a species of relatively weak, slow, hairless apes manage to protect the most vulnerable offspring on the planet without cribs, without locked doors, and without walls? The answer is one of the most incredible survival stories in the history of life on Earth. It involves biological hacks, invisible walls of flame, the genius of the prehistoric grandmother, and a terrifying psychological weapon that we deployed against the rest of the animal kingdom. Let's get into it. The first line of defense ancient humans used to protect their young was surprisingly simple, but it required an immense amount of physical endurance. They simply never put the baby down. In a world with no baby monitors and no safe rooms, physical closeness was quite literally a matter of life or death. Natural selection had very stark rules back then. Mothers who left their children alone for more than a few minutes soon had no children. If an infant was left alone, it was going to be eaten or it was going to freeze. So, our ancestors developed a strategy of near constant physical contact. Anthropologists who study modern hunter-gatherer societies, which give us a window into our Pleistocene past, have found staggering numbers regarding this. In the Aka communities of Central Africa, for example, infants are physically held by someone for 91% of the entire day. Think about that. 91% of the time, that baby is in someone's arms or strapped to a body in a makeshift sling of animal hide or plant fiber. This continuous contact wasn't just about keeping the baby from crawling off a cliff. It was a highly evolved defense mechanism. When a baby is constantly held, warmed, and fed exactly the moment it gets hungry, it is incredibly secure. And secure babies do not cry as much. By actively carrying their infants and instantly responding to their needs, ancient humans drastically shortened crying bouts, which kept the tribe quiet, which kept the predators away, and this physical contact did not stop when the sun went down. The modern debate about whether babies should sleep in cribs or with their parents didn't exist for 99% of human history. For Paleolithic families, there was no separate nursery. Co-sleeping was an absolute, non-negotiable survival requirement. Mothers, fathers, and children slept pressed together. This kept the infants warm, it kept them from wandering off, and it ensured that if a predator did breach the camp, the child was literally shielded by adult bodies. Sleeping alone reduced a child's chance of survival to almost zero. But even with constant carrying and co-sleeping, one mother cannot successfully defend and provide for a slow-growing human child all by herself. A human child requires an estimated 10 to 13 million calories to grow to independence. That is an impossible workload for a single parent in the wild. So, human evolution pulled off a brilliant trick. We invented a system called cooperative breeding, or what anthropologists call alloparenting. You have probably heard the phrase, "It takes a village to raise a child." In prehistoric times, that wasn't a cute metaphor. It was a biological reality. Unlike other great apes, where the mother is the exclusive, solitary caretaker, human mothers had backup fathers, Siblings, aunts, uncles, and entirely unrelated tribe members all pitched in. Among the Aka people today, an infant is passed from person to person so frequently that by the time a baby is 18 weeks old, it actually spends more time being held by other people than by its own mother. When researchers asked an FA mother who cares for the babies in her community, she answered simply, "We all do." This strategy of babysitting is essentially a defensive shield. It means there are always multiple sets of eyes watching the shadows. If the mother needs to forage for food, the baby isn't left vulnerable under a bush. It is guarded by another alert adult. We aren't the only species to figure this out by. Sperm whales use a very similar babysitting tactic because young whale calves cannot dive into the deep ocean to feed. Leaving them alone at the surface makes them easy targets for killer whales. So, the adult whales stagger their dives, ensuring that at least one massive adult is always at the surface guarding the calf. Human alloparenting worked exactly the same way. Shared care meant shared defense. But out of all the babysitters in the ancient human village, one specific group played a defensive role so crucial that scientists believe they literally changed the trajectory of human evolution. The grandmothers. There is a fascinating evolutionary mystery surrounding human women. Females in our species live decades past their reproductive ability. In almost every other animal on Earth, once an individual can no longer reproduce, they don't live much longer. But human women go through menopause and then routinely live for another 30 or 40 years. Why would natural selection program the human body to live so robustly for so long after it can no longer pass on its own genes directly? It is called the grandmother hypothesis. The idea is that human children take so long to grow up and are so incredibly vulnerable that it became biologically advantageous for older women to stop having their own babies and instead dedicate all their energy and wisdom to protecting and feeding their grandchildren. In hunter-gatherer societies, post-menopausal grandmothers are absolute powerhouses. They do the hard, complex work of foraging for deep-rooted tubers and tough foods that younger children cannot acquire themselves. By taking on this massive workload, grandmothers ensured the children were fed, protected, and carefully watched, while the younger adults hunted or defended the territory. A grandmother's presence was literally an anti-starvation, anti-predator insurance policy. Math and field studies confirm this. The presence of a helpful grandmother directly correlates to higher survival rates for the children. We survived the Pleistocene because grandma was on watch, and we can't ignore the fathers. In most ape species, males provide basically zero care for the young. They are just there to mate and fight. But human fathers evolved differently. Human males began to actively hold, comfort, and provision their infants. And biology actually rewires men to do this. Modern studies show that when a human male becomes an active, hands-on father, his testosterone levels significantly drop. The body intentionally dials down the hormone associated with mating and aggression and gears the father up for nurturing and defensive caregiving. We evolved to be a tightly knit, fiercely protective family unit. But love and teamwork can only get you so far when a saber-toothed tiger decides it is hungry. Flesh and bone cannot stop claws and fangs. To truly defend their young, ancient humans needed a weapon. And they found the ultimate one: fire, the control of fire, which started anywhere from 1 to 2 million years ago with Homo erectus, fundamentally altered the balance of power on the African savanna. Fire wasn't just a way to cook meat. Fire was a tactical military defense system. When early humans hunted massive megafauna, like elephants or hippos, they ended up with a literal mountain of meat that could feed a group of 25 people for a month. But a dead elephant is the biggest predator magnet, and leaving it exposed meant fighting off lions and giant hyenas. Researchers have found that early humans used fire specifically as a defensive tool to guard these massive carcasses. A wall of flame and smoke deterred the predator and allowed the humans to process the food in safety. And that exact same logic applied to the camp at night. Before fire, humans had to sleep up in the trees to avoid getting eaten. But balancing on a branch means you can't fall deeply asleep, and it is a terrible place to safely hold a squirming infant. Fire changed the rules. It created a glowing circle of safety on the ground. It warded off predatory animals, keeping the darkness and the monsters at bay. Inside that ring of fire, the tribe could stay warm, children could sleep deeply, and the whole group could safely interact and bond at night. Fire was the first fortress. But humans didn't just hide behind walls of flame. Over tens of thousands of years, we deployed a completely different psychological defense strategy to protect our family. We stopped being just prey, and we became the scariest thing on the planet. We became the super predator. You see, animals are not just reacting randomly to the world. They navigate something scientists call the landscape of fear. Prey animals map out their entire lives based on where predators are most likely to be. And for millions of years, early humans were an active, terrifying part of that map. Paleolithic humans were persistence hunters. We didn't out-sprint our prey. We just relentlessly jogged after them for hours until they literally collapsed from heat exhaustion. To an animal, a group of humans slowly walking toward you, holding sharp sticks, never stopping, never getting tired, was the stuff of nightmares because we hunted so effectively and because we defended our camp so violently. The animals that survived were the ones that learned to run away from us. Immediately, this fear became hardwired into their DNA. In 2016, researchers at the University of Western Ontario proved exactly how deep this fear goes. They went out into the wild and played audio recordings to various animals. They didn't play the sounds of roaring lions or howling wolves. They just played the sound of normal humans talking, like a casual conversation at a bus stop. The results were absolutely staggering. Apex predators, animals that normally fear nothing, panicked. Mountain lions, bobcats, and wolves fled from the sound of human voices faster and harder than they fled from the sounds of any other threat. A mountain lion, a creature that takes down adult deer, will drop everything and run for its life just because it hears us talking. This is because we are the ultimate unpredictable variable. Predators have patterns. Wolves hunt at dawn and dusk. Hawks hunt in fields. Animals can learn those patterns to stay safe. But humans, we hunt day and night. We use traps, spears, fire, and arrows. We hunt in the water and on land. From an animal's perspective, we make no sense. And that makes us the most terrifying force in nature. So, when a child wandered slightly too far from the camp, or when a mother was out foraging with a baby strapped to her chest, they weren't entirely defenseless. They were protected by an invisible aura of terror that our species had spent hundreds of thousands of years building. The predators stayed away because they knew that messing with the hairless apes resulted in getting hunted down by the entire tribe. Our reputation was our shield. So, let's pull all of this together. How did ancient humans defend their completely helpless, crying, slow-growing babies in a world of monsters? We didn't do it with armor, and we didn't do it by getting faster. We did it through unparalleled cooperation and unyielding physical closeness. We survived because mothers refused to put their babies down. We survived because fathers evolved to nurture and protect. We survived because the grandparents stepped up to take the night watch and forage for food. We survived because we tamed fire to build a glowing wall against the darkness. And ultimately, we survived because we banded together and became so incredibly dangerous that the rest of the animal kingdom learned to fear the very sound of our voices. The next time you see a parent carrying a sleeping baby in a grocery store, or a grandmother handing a child a snack, or a family sitting around a campfire, don't just see a modern moment. You are looking at the exact ancient software that kept our species alive. That is the echo of the Pleistocene. That is how we conquered